Hello, everybody. Welcome to our Impact Week and this session dedicated to impact investments. And what we are aiming to address today is to know if impact investment is a new investment and growth driver. So we are very pleased to welcome today Cyril Gouiffès from EIF. Hello, Cyril.
Hello. Pleased to be here. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being there with us. We have Régis Hamelin, the CTO of BLUMORPHO.
Good morning, everyone.
And myself, I'm Géraldine Andrieux. I'm the CEO and founder of BLUMORPHO. And as you know, BLUMORPHO is a company dedicated to innovation. We are supporting the creation of new venture, new concept product, new collaboration scheme, very dedicated to deep tech and AI, and with a mission also to support the evolution toward more sustainable ecosystems and markets and basically economy. So this catch-and-do session is dedicated to raise what we think are very relevant questions and also to define actions that we can engage to address those questions. This is part of the Impact Week, and we have a great partner for this Impact Week this year. It's the program C-Voucher, supported by the European Commission, and it's also part of the European Green Week, with the goal to work all together to make the ambition for a zero pollution and toxic-free environment a reality. So we are very happy to collaborate with the European Commission on this very important topic. And this Impact Week, very briefly, just to give you also an idea, we have a lot of different sessions that we are running from May the 20th. Today we have Cyril with us, very important session to address the impact investment. Next week we're going to have Chiara from Patagonia, who will explain also how the textile industry has entered into impact activities and circularity. And Arjo Wiggins with defining how the paper is also revolutioning the electronics industry. We're going to have a Meet the Investor with Sodexo Venture, Ship2B Venture, and Truffle Venture. And finally, to end the Impact Week, a great activity driven by Monaco Marina Management to support smart marina development, making marinas sustainable, to pave the way to the smart city, to become real smart and really sustainable. So join us for all those sessions. They are designed for you to drive your positive actions. Catch and do, it's very interactive, as you know already. So to know how to use this interaction tool, we have a first question for you. How do you feel today? So Régis, maybe we can launch the first poll to ask our participants to test our tool. And also, we want to know how you feel. So just share that with us.
Yeah, what is your weather mood? How do you feel today? This is a very important question. We are really want to know how you feel, and we hope you are going well. If you just don't know, just look outside the window and pick over the right option.
You just have to click. And so the game is to do it fast, because we're going to ask you a lot of questions during this session. And you will see those questions will be addressed also by Cyril. So at the end, you will compare what you were thinking at the beginning with the feedback of Cyril. And it's very interesting also to align our thinking and also to open new questions. I take the opportunity to remind you also that you have a question box. So we will take time for question at the end of the session. So don't hesitate to ask all your questions. This is what we want to do. We know to make it very interactive, even though we can't be all together currently, but those time will come soon for sure. Okay, so how people feel today? A lot of sunny. We have one cloudy, so we hope that you will feel better at the end of the session. So now let's start. Maybe Cyril, you can make a short introduction about yourself before we catch another point, which is going to be what you do, but maybe you can make a very short introduction about yourself.
Yes, of course. Thank you, Géraldine. Thank you, Régis. So my name is Cyril Gouiffès. I'm a French citizen based in Luxembourg, working for the European Investment Fund. I have joined the European Investment Fund in 2008. Before joining the EIF, I used to be working in the field of microfinance with or for microfinance institutions, more in developing markets. that's the reason why I joined the EIF in 2008, first working on microfinance related topics, and especially developing programs to onboard this financial instrument also in Europe. Yes, microfinance has been developed and was born, let's say, in Southeastern Asia, also in some ways in Africa. The idea was to see how people excluded from mainstream bank sector in Europe could also benefit from microfinance and microcredit. I did that for 5 years, and then moved to the impact investing team, so on the equity side of our business, to be part of let's say the very first team in EIF who decided to raise and manage the first European impact fund of fund, a dedicated vehicle for that. That was back in 2013. So time flew since then, has flown, and yeah, I'll be happy to also provide an update on where we are and what we do today.
Very interesting, and it's very interesting also to get this journey of impact investment, because this is indeed a new trend, but it's not a trend, it's a reality, and this is what we want to cover with you. And so it's very important for us that our audience also better understand what does it mean to be Cyril Gouiffès at EIF, Head of Social Impact Investments. So we'd like to ask you, our participant, the question of what do you think will keep Cyril up at night? So Regis, we can open the poll and see what our audience thinks about Cyril challenge at his work.
People can vote now. You can have multiple options. If you think that there are multiple problems that keep Cyril up at night. So we're going to discuss about the activity of the European Investment Fund, but we are interested to know what is your perception of the activity of the European Investment Fund. So yeah, you can do better. We have about half of the population who have voted. So yeah, give it a few clicks. And Geraldine, while people are voting,
yeah, I think we can start on that actually, Cyril, and we're just giving 1 more minute, Regis, to our participant when we are starting with Cyril. So what keeps you up at night, Cyril?
Yeah, obviously, first of all, I feel that working in the, acting very much on the source of financing for impact strategies across Europe is a very exciting opportunity. So it is indeed for sure an intense professional activity, but a very passionate one. So I would say what keeps me up at night when thinking about my role in EIF is we are managing large mandates that are not exclusively but in part public monies. So obviously one of our first core priorities is to make sure that we invest those resources as wisely, and make sure that the overriding mandate of our team is to put capital at work on the market in the best and make it available for the best possible impact ventures that are going to find, build, contribute to identify solutions for the world's most pressing problems, social, environmental, especially. So that's certainly one big chunk of responsibility that for which we feel the pressure, for sure. Also, next to it, making sure that also working for the future, and that has to do with advocacy. Not sure it's the best terminology, but definitely we are nurturing relationships with the European Commission, with the EIB, and always put forward key message and stress how important and strategic impact investing is, so that also, while hopefully taking good decisions today, we also don't leave behind the strategic aspects of medium and long term, and make sure that we can also have stable sources of funding for these strategies. Finally, I would say that making sure that the impact investing movement that is growing very fast, and that is very much a movement in the sense that there are many underlying forces that generate and nurture these strengths and movement, make sure that all sides of Europe are also part of this movement, and not only invest in those markets that are the most developed. Yes, we have a role to play here, perhaps more as a market catalyst. We also have a market builder role in some other areas of Europe, and we take pride when we can be when we're able, like we were recently, be cornerstone investor in the first Croatian impact fund, Hungarian impact fund. We are also actively working on a Polish opportunity now. So that would keep me up at night, but also still consider very interesting or very fascinating topics to work on.
So let's have a look to what our audience think keeps you up at night. So you could comment on that. So
yes,
it's good because to see that our audience think that sourcing new opportunities in European untapped ecosystems is one of your main challenge. But let's comment that.
Yeah, actually, that's definitely that this sourcing new opportunities in untapped ecosystem is very important element in our work, and actually a topic that is also dear to my heart for personal reasons. But I think first of all, thank you, Géraldine, Régis, for putting also these options on the table. These are all very relevant options, and the way or what the poll shows is like a very fair reflection of what matters very much in our work.
That's very good. And I just take the opportunity also because I know we have participants coming from European DIH candidates and DIH, Digital Innovation Hubs, also always looking to link with private investments. So indeed, we are currently working on the Green Deal in Europe. We have this strong strategy, to lead this Green Deal evolution. So I think it's also a good opportunity for these local players also to build link with the EIF. So that's also what we wanted to do today. So that's a good point. Very good. Okay, so let's go to the next topic. And now we know each other, basically. The topic we want to discuss with you is how to define and measure impact investment. As you mentioned, you started the fund in 2013, it's not so long ago. So we'd like also to address that. And again, we have a poll for our participants to think about it, and then we can discuss it with you.
Yeah, that's a question to the audience. How do you think we can clearly measure the impact investment? Is it the number of jobs created, the economic growth, overall economic growth, the inclusion, the reduced impact on environment, which is an important mission as well, but a little bit in parallel? Maybe that you think that's a very good question, and that's maybe a difficult thing to measure. So yeah, Géraldine, you can maybe open the discussion while people are voting.
Exactly. I will give you the floor actually, Cyril, too, because last year you joined also the Impact Week, and we know that it was also a very important point. So we'd like also to address it, how to define and measure impact investment. That's a very important point.
Yeah. So I'll start perhaps with a piece of definition and then get back to how we measure it. So in terms of definition, as you know, there are always pretty strong debates in the industry, what is or is not impact. The way we look at it at EIF, and I think that the first piece of this part of this definition is raising a fairly large consensus in the industry. An impact company is first characterized by the intentionality. So in the impact space, the good that emerges from the business model, from the service, the products performed, made available by a venture, a startup, is not an externality. So that means intentionality is key. And we are seeing actually this as one major driver for the current growth of the impact investing market. So first, intentionality. Second, also profitability, sustainability, depend how you want to call it. But fact is that the second characteristic of impact investing is the positive correlation that should exist between impact performance on the one end and financial performance on the other. That would be the second pillar of our definition. And finally, the third one has to do with scalability. So as in any investment activity, you are, as an investor, after scale and make sure that the company, the fund you invest in is indeed growing. In the impact investing world also has an aspect, the scale aspect has also has virtues linked with the outreach of a company. So the more you grow, the more the service product that has a positive impact on society or environment, the more it is made available to a wider audience. So this, for the definition, this is how we generally define an impact company, and they're on our impact investing strategy.
Okay. So Cyril, you know, to cover the point on how to define and measure, it could be interesting to see what our audience think based on the question we marked here. And then you can also maybe comment on that and highlight some very important point to you. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, again, this is this polling tool is very interesting, and make it a good way to interact, let's say, with the audience beyond the question and answers that I'm sure will come also later. Here we can see that, for instance, environment stands out as a privileged vertical or privileged area where impact should be generated, and it is also obviously very true. I mean, the climate crisis and environment innovation that we need to generate has to do obviously with the constant headlines we can read, hear, see in the media in general on the climate situation, from floods to wildfires in the Amazon or the melting ices on the North Pole, South Pole. So this is clearly an area where the attention of the public is very much drawn to act if we want to still be able to live on the planet Earth. So that's a very fair reflection of also of the deal flow we see coming in at EIF, meaning a lot of the impact funds that approach us do have a particular environment, energy strategy. Now, next to it, obviously, you have a variety of intervention. Social inclusion is another area. Social inclusion, job creation is another area where there are huge inequalities to access the labor market, and where we believe innovation, technology can play an important role in building a more inclusive society. Next to plenty of other things, technology alone will not be able to create this more inclusive society. Let us be clear and not naive, but also let us face the reality that technology can play a very important role. Let's say the areas that where we see impact fund being raised, I think are today very those impact funds are very exhaustive in terms of impact areas, and going the most recurring sectors that we see in the space, and I think we're going to get back to this point later, are very much around education, healthcare, social inclusion, as said, food and agriculture, energy, blue economy. There are plethoric fields where today actually an innovation intervention is needed to mitigate the negative human interaction with the Earth we live in, and the society we evolve in.
So it brings me to the next question, actually, which is also, we see how you measure. So basically, I think your audience has a good understanding on what is impact investment and how to measure it. You mentioned something very important, meaning that, of course, the mission and the motivation is one very important point, and then the profitability has to be here as well. So it could be interesting also to address what are the economic drivers. We had this session last week with circular capital. We mentioned that the mission is good, but of course they are investors, so they need to make profits. They need to also fit their LPs' expectations. So according to you, when it's deal with impact investments, what will be the economic driver we need to pay attention to, or are the more important? And we have a poll also for our audience to think about it before we go to the question. So we are collecting the voting right now.
People are voting either with the Green Deal policies, the environmental, social governance criteria policies. Is it because we have more mission-based companies which are driving this ecosystem, this impact investment? So there are more demands, so more impact investment. Or the evolution of the customer behaviors. We can think that maybe, in fact, there's a customer traction. And the theory of change, the change theory, which is another current of thoughts. So yeah, Geraldine.
Yeah, so Cyril, what do you think about it? And in 1 minute, we will share also the feedback of the poll, so you can react on our audience thinking.
Yes, I think that all the elements that are here listed all contribute to nurture the growth of the impact investing space. I would perhaps summarize in two massive trends, themselves also nurtured by the policies, the policy framework, the regulatory framework, and the incentives that have to be put in place by public bodies and the policy makers, for sure. That's the general context, but two areas in particular. First, LP's interest. So I think that investors at large interest for impact and broader than impact, ESG, and let's say conscious investing has changed dramatically in 10-15 years. And I've moved from a fancy, nice to have, from now something that is becoming closer to a must-have, because there is, I'm always very impressed by how much the idea is emerging also in investors' mind. Not all, obviously. Again, let us not be naive, but on the fact that generating financial performance for the sole sake of generating financial performance is actually what led us in the situation. So today, and I think this is another massive contribution of impact investing to the overall investment debate, or investment best practice debate. Let's say you cannot only look at the bottom line as an investor, so you can no longer do that. If you do, well, you'd better have a good, very strong budget on marketing and communication, because there will necessarily be a backlash, big time, and we see that more and more. So LP's interest in what is one major driver. The second driver, that is perhaps even more important, because implies a more endogenous growth of these impact investing strategies. The second driver, and perhaps the major one, is actually the fact that today's entrepreneurs going to the market are no longer exclusively looking at being successful. Of course, it's important, nothing wrong with that. But next to building a successful venture and become a successful founder, there is also the will as a citizen, as part of the civil society, to contribute to identify and emerge tangible solutions to the world's most pressing problems. And I think that's an even more powerful leeway for or driver for impact investment, because in the end you have from both hands pressure that is going towards let us be conscious and let us make sure that throughout the value chain there are clear goals identified, and those clear goals are not around cannot be exclusively around increasing the wealth of economic actors in the chain.
Yeah. So maybe we can have a short look at the poll results, and I think it's covering what you mentioned. You can comment it, obviously.
Yeah. I mean that's definitely the Green Deal. Good. It stands out also as one of the answers, because I think it's also a very bold and important move from the European Commission and policymakers in the space. But we have, as said, mission-based companies, the fact that more and more even VCs or other funds, investors at large, when they look at the entrepreneurs coming to them for investments, are certainly seeing more and more, or larger and larger portion of this deal flow that also has the ambition to contribute to solve the world's most pressing problems. So totally understand the feature, the characteristic of the poll here.
So it brings us to the next question, because we understand the motivation, we understand the driver, we understand how to measure now impact investment, but how to serve it, how to operate it. And we would like to come to this point about can it drive also, we would like to also to address the social impact, because we speak a lot about environmental impact, but the social impact is very important. It's not only the planet, it's also the people. It's a very important point. But we like also to address the question of what will be the solution, and we have a very dedicated question to that. So Regis, we can maybe open this the next poll with your motivation to understand what could be the solution according to you that could contribute to a positive economy and social impact. Regis, you want to address it?
Yeah, sure. So you have multiple options. You have the circular economy. We have seen before that the environment is a great concern, and maybe the #1 concern from the audience here. So circular economy, is it a solution that can contribute? What about the human-centric internet? This is a strong, very strong evolution that the Commission wants to develop. So it's called the Next Generation Internet Initiative. What about the gig platform? Gig platform is more for the social side, and AI for education, for example, or none of them. And people are now voting right now.
Maybe we can start addressing this point. If you have any analysis on that, Cyril, could be quite useful. We know that within the different initiatives supported by the European Commission, there is a lot of technology and including also circularity, which is also very encouraged by the European Commission. So it can't be only technology. It has to serve an ambition and a mission. And we do see links with social impact investment, but we like to get your point of view.
Yeah. I would perhaps take a step back, and if you allow, and just
absolutely
in order to answer this question, that is a key one, another key central one. Also touch on the fact that this is, I believe, one of the strong merits of impact investing, that has actually many things in common with other areas of, let's say, shall we say, social finance, responsible finance at large, is that it seeks to bring around the table, to gather around the same table, people who have perhaps different profiles, who perhaps used to have some cliches and given ideas on how behaves the other one in front of him. And in other words, the massive contribution of impact investing to the debate, is that it seeks to also create synergies and common objectives for different actors that perhaps also never used to work together. Perhaps because there is this sense of pressure that we feel every day reading the news, you know, on the climate distress, on revenues, the revenues differences including in very developed and rich countries, that impact investing is also, in my view, a symptom of the fact that we need to find common solutions. And so out of all the options you gave and provided in the poll here, Geraldine, I believe that none can be excluded. So we have to escape from a binary mode where, you know, as an investor, you have to either choose between doing good by signing a subsidy, for instance, in a given NGO foundation, and doing well by having public listed stocks or treasury management in a variety of financial instruments. The immense merit of impact investing, and this is something that, by the way, would keep me up at night very much, is that it has to have the ambition to be the financial instrument where you no longer have to choose between doing good and doing well. So as much as we need, you know, civil society, people who have strong expertise in financial system, policymakers, basically a whole representation of society to create this positive impact. The same way we need to use technology, put it at the service of a better distribution of revenues, make better accessibility to the world of education, provide tutorial or tutoring, one-on-one courses to people, to teenagers who are living in the areas with the wrong zip code that are stigmatized. But with technology, you can make available for free math tutorial, and if your grades improve in math, well, guess what? Also, your prospects for your university, for your life as a whole, also grow. There are none of these solutions on a standalone basis can work and would be like some kind of magic stick. This is for sure. It has to be a very holistic answer from all parts of the society, but also picking up on many elements that you've identified in the poll, from artificial intelligence, processing big data, the use of blockchain, technology as a whole, but also this has to be at the service of a better taking into account of all different layers of the societies, the agendas, and agendas in the sense of what matters for different layers of the society. So this is where an economic answer becomes very politic in a way. So even though we are no policymakers in the EIB, EIF at large, we are policy enablers, but that's definitely the answer that is put forward by impact investing, I would say.
No, that's a very interesting answer, actually, Cyril, and I think it's a very strong message as well. Maybe we can just have a very quick look at the poll just to see also the feedback. It might be interesting to have a look at it.
Economy is by far almost 100% of the people listening today are in that circular economy is definitely about impact, and a little bit less on the gig platform, but nobody thinks that none of that is part of the positive impact.
Yeah, it's actually funny because can you just clarify? So by gig platform, I understand it as community-based type of platform enabled through technology. If this is the case, you know, funny to think about, for instance, a company like Vinted, who is also certainly has areas to watch out for, because in the end, even if it's circular economy, it is still about very fast consumption of fashion. But this is a typical example where technology, where through technology, a company can put forward innovative business models that encourage people to use, reuse instead of throwing away textile and clothes as a whole. So obviously, again, one should not look at that with a binary angle, because I think from many ways you could very much question the vintage model, but still it is certainly a start. To me, I take this type of business model as a start of the answer. This is the seed of the answer that illustrates the fact that you cannot, same as you cannot consider technology will be the answer for all our issues. I don't believe that. You can also not assert that technology is not going to be an important leeway to generate positive change. So combining the interesting results of the poll from circular economy being a major area that contributes to positive economy and social impact, which I would, by the way, very strongly agree with. Circular economy can also be nurtured through platforms, through models, that we're just starting to see. And the more we will invest in these fields, I am convinced that the better the answer will be.
Very important point indeed. Thank you very much, Cyril, on that. And just in 2 minutes, because I think we are also addressing this point about circularity, Regis, maybe you can give an highlight about different companies. Some of them are with us today, actually.
Yeah, indeed. We wanted to give a highlight and a heads up from the winners of the C-Voucher competition. There were 6 winners, and you can see that, in fact, there are multiple areas. All of these companies are into circularity in some point or another. Pixel for the packaging, for food. Traceless, it's about bioplastics. Circle, it's about clothes, workwear, more specifically. Rexcon is in construction. Think Biosolution, it's a wearable device, but they want to have a circular and eco-conception of their device. And Artex is about reusing waste. So you can see that there are many different verticals or business verticals where circularity can apply. And we just wanted to make, again, congratulate the winners of the C-Voucher contest.
It's open the question to, if you have a few key industry you would like to highlight for impact investments, what could it be in 1 or 2 minutes, actually, Cyril, because we are already.
Yeah, I think, sure. I'll try to be short, Geraldine. It's actually, I alluded to that earlier in our discussion. I think that most of the 10 years ago, most of the impact funds that approached us would have generalist strategies. It's still the case to a large extent today, but we are seeing still that the focus is still narrowing quite a lot. So we see reoccurring industries, verticals in our impact portfolio, and I would name the following ones. Very much around, on the social side, education, healthcare, health, and health not understood as drug development or fundamental research, but rather, using technology again to make sure people suffering from dementia can get support as early, as fast as necessary. Aging population, also finding ways to monitor people that in a way that on the one hand they no longer need to leave their home, they can stay longer in their place, which is often what is preferred by aging population at large. And also that, by the way, also represents savings for public welfare, to have people that are able to stay in their own place, which is the best option for all for a longer period of time. I would also mention another, social inclusion and employment at large. A field that is on the edge between social impact and environmental impact is food and agriculture. That is also a very important industry in this space. To name now others that are also on the environmental side, I would add circular economy, as was mentioned, energy, very much, waste management as a whole. So altogether, when we talk about it in 1 year or 2 years time, I hope we'll have this chance. Well, I would not be surprised to have again more industries crowding in, because if I can just conclude on that point, I think that the massive contribution of the impact investing scene to investment debate in general is that it strives to not only to take into to onboard in the investment making decisions non-financial data, and having measurable, tangible impact measurement methodology, same as the one we use, for instance, leads to effectively take into account those elements in your due diligence. And that is a massive change of mentalities, I believe.
Very good point indeed. Thank you very much on that as well. Now I know we have a lot of startups also who have joined today, and I'd like to know if you have any advices on the type of profile of investors they should contact if they are in line with impact investment, and if you have any advice to them, you know, how to reach and how to find the right investors for them, and where they should focus on in terms of introducing their company.
Yeah, it's a delicate question, because I guess that for, you know, identifying a general answer to a question that is often covers very different realities and has to be treated certainly more on a case-by-case basis. But I would say, to name one, so one very important element, just to make sure we are on the same page. So what should founders look for when they're raising in the impact space? To rephrase your question, Geraldine, right?
Yeah, exactly. And what would be the good strategy for them? Because we know it could take time, you know, to raise money, but if you do it in the right way,
it does take time. That's for real. Now, also, what is very clear on the market today is that there is capital available at work in the equity space for innovation, especially for impact. We are also, by the way, raising the successor of our previous fund of fund, and we are trying to make sure that we also can remain this stable source of funding for the market. And we are confident into that. I would say that one very important message is to make clear that as an impact startup venture, you measure and take your impact seriously and seek to really make it understandable, shareable with investors in a comprehensive scorecard, where also you as a founder can be accountable for the impact that is or not achieved. I think that's a very important element. We need to move from a universe or a setup where we treat impact measurement as a reporting. We need to move from this unsatisfying setup to a setup where impact measurement becomes an alignment of interest tool for the whole value chain. So that means coming up with a comprehensive scorecard, identifying good KPIs, and also showing to potential investors how you intend to improve your mark on all these KPIs, and be basically next to your business model, add a very sound impact strategy.
With measurement and the
With
tool
measurement.
to measure it. Yes, not only to claim it, but to measure it and prove it.
Exactly.
And this is also where technology.
That will only make your business model more credible, legitimate, and again, avoid any concern around impact washing your business model.
Yeah. And this is also where technology can be really useful, actually, because it's not always easy to measure and to monitor, so technology can help. Before we go to the next question, before we go to the question of our participant, I just have a last one for you. Impact investment is quite new, even though it's like 10 years now. But do you think it will also open new ways of new funding scheme? We see a lot of cryptocurrency. We see now SPAC. We see new trends in the investment world. Do you think that impact will benefit from it or will contribute to it? What do you have a point of view on that?
Yes, I am convinced about it, and that's obviously one could claim I'm not very objective. That's also true. You know, I'm based in this environment all day long, so guilty for that. But I'm convinced it would be the case. Looking especially at one angle I already mentioned earlier, but where I think impact investing has a very important contribution to make to the debate is that, again, next to all the positive aspects we've already mentioned in this presentation this morning, I think one area where impact investing is a game changer is that it seeks to integrate into the investment decision not only financial metrics, but also looking at other aspects. And I believe this is where impact investing is going to influence the investment world at large, if not the economic world at large. Look, and that I would relate, or I would link this innovation that impact investment brings to wider and larger debates. For instance, we all know that the way we measure wealth of nation, the way we measure growth of GDP and growth period, that's always expressed. We no longer even claim growth of GDP. We say next year growth is expected to land around 2%, for instance. This compass is actually misused, or this compass is steering us in the wrong direction, because that's why the link between this assertion, let's say, and impact investing is that there are nowadays a lot of research being worked on around impact-weighted accounting, coming up to new accounting standards that not only look at financial aspects, and also wider discussion around how do you measure the wealth of a nation, of a country. And there is a growing consensus that GDP, growth of GDP, is not a satisfying index, or is at least an index that does not help us to change direction. So that, to be a bit ambitious, obviously, because we are talking about huge macro trends that trigger a lot of interests. So obviously it's not going to be changed in a day or overnight, but I believe that definitely impact investing not only opened the way to new funding schemes, but also to a new approach to the way of investing, or investing capital as a whole.
Thank you. It's very opening a lot of new opportunities actually for all the players active in impact investments. Regis, I think it's time to take some questions.
Yeah, and I first want to share another poll to the audience. Would you like to receive more information on the EIF, Impact Week, Next Generation Internet, Circularity, or C-Voucher? And while the people are answering to this poll, I would like to share with you one question from Jan in the audience, who would like to know how they can get in touch with the European Investment Fund. As founder or as a startup within the circular economy, how can you get in contact with the European Investment Fund? So behind that question, you can say if it's useful or not to get in touch with you.
Well, to be obviously, I mean, first of all, through this webinar, I'm happy to follow up, and you know, Geraldine, Regis, you have my contact details. If ever you are approached to get, please feel free to share my contact details. As a disclaimer, I should also add that even though available and always happy to help on these questions, EIF is an indirect or is a kind of wholesaler on the market. We do not invest directly in startups, in companies. We invest in funds as a fund of fund, then in turn invest into startups and SMEs. So in this respect, there are obviously considerations on the market I can share, and that can be helpful to a founder. That would never be through the funding lens. This is something we cannot do because we act at a more macro level, let's say.
Okay, yeah, very well. We have other people who would like really to get your insight for direct advice. In fact, more considering advising. Okay, another interesting question from Mia, and who knows very well New Zealand, because she said New Zealand apparently have chosen another measure than GDP. Are they going in the right direction?
Yes, actually, I am. Thank you for this news. I wasn't aware that New Zealand had opted for another GDP index. I'll look into it. Thank you for the information. But a country like Bhutan, also small country in Asia, as you may know, is calculating a so-called the happiness national product, if I'm not mistaken. And so it's a compounded index that obviously has not, for the moment, is used only in Bhutan. It's a small country, very preserved, a bit isolated, and the scale is perhaps not there. But I'll look into the New Zealand example. I wasn't aware about that. But it's also, by the way, you know, I'm not sure about the name in English. In French, it's indice de développement humain that is calculated by the UN for each country, by the UNDP. This is a compounded index, meaning that you had a lot of data to get to a relative measure from 0 to 1 that in itself doesn't say much, but has the merits and is able to incorporate a number of variables into one single index that looks at, for instance, revenue differences, education levels, mortality rate, infantile mortality rate in a country, and through which is able to come up to one single consolidated, compounded, so human development index. And I think that's certainly a path that would be interesting to look at if we were to consider changing our GDP compass.
And we also have a comment from Anne that says that not only New Zealand, but also Scotland measure the happiness quota. So maybe the sunny weather that we were mentioning at the beginning was part of the index. But thank you very much, Anne, for your comments. I have myself a question. We, BLUMORPHO, as ecosystem designer and member of this innovation ecosystem, we see a lot of kind of new breed of entrepreneurs. We see a lot of people who are really motivated, who are real entrepreneurs, who want to change the world, and want to change to have a real impact on investment. And as you said previously during the conversation we just had, they're not necessarily driven by profit. And they go so far that they are not creating a company, they are not making a company, but more a foundation or a cooperative. And the cooperative model is more and more, we see more and more cooperatives, in fact. I can give some examples of two cooperatives we are working with. We are working, for example, with Resonate. Resonate is a community-owned music network. It's a Spotify where you have a fair payment of your music, of your art, and it's owned by the musicians. And Resonate has lots of potential because something which is not necessarily a real success on a major and that will not make a lot of money on Spotify could make a living out of Resonate because there's a real compensation here. Another example would be, for example, the next slide, Landin. We have also another cooperative, which is Genie Co-op or Genie Consents that just changed the world. Their idea is to collect the genome data from the population of donors who are willing to support research and to become kind of a trader of this data towards the research community in a fully GDPR compliant manner, because today these data are handled without really consent management. So these two organizations are building cooperatives. So are there any kind of instruments that could support the kind of organizations?
Yeah, well, that's, I mean, cooperatives, depending on the market, depending on the jurisdiction, cooperative can or cannot raise from a variety of investors. In France, for instance, there was the creation of titres participatifs, that allow funds, banks, private individuals to support a foundation financially without jeopardizing the whole model of a cooperative, which is built around the ownership of its members, which is an interesting one. I think that also next to this is a company like a cooperative, a limited liability company is also would also grow as much or change in functions of where it stands on its growth journey. So if the cooperative element is one strong aspect of the model, then obviously it needs to stay at the heart, and it needs to stay this way with the variety of financial instruments that are being developed, from social impact bonds to those titres contre impact social, titres participatifs I was referring to. There is, I believe, a wide variety, or there are more opportunities today for a cooperative to be able to raise funding, increase its members base than used to be the case. So definitely, I think the cooperative movement, and we see countries where in Italy, for instance, this is very much a backbone of the Italian economy. I would say is already advanced, you know, when it comes to understanding or being an inclusive governance structure that in turn also translate into taking right decisions for the growth of the business that are not made at the expense of any parties around in the ecosystem.
Thank you very much. And maybe one last question from the audience. Someone who has a startup into circular economy asks is how important it is to measure the social or the environmental impact when talking to investors. How do you measure it correctly in the seed phase?
Yeah, it's very in the seed phase especially, it is difficult. That's for sure. As I said earlier, I think be able to objectively, scientifically measure and transparently, obviously, measure your impact or make display to third parties your impact that you have as a company is key, is fundamental. The way we look at it, and that's perhaps a good clue for this the person who asked this question, because the way we measure the impact, the way we implement it with the funds we invest in, is certainly on the verge of becoming a common language, a common standard in Europe. And the way we look at it is the following. First, you commit to define a number of impact indicators for your model, even if at seed, yes, perhaps in 2 years, they will no longer be the same. That's not a problem. You need to be able to report and measure what you're doing right now and what you can commit to right now. And next to these impact indicators, an important element is that you set yourself a quantifiable target as a founder, perhaps with a time horizon in 5 years on this given indicator. I'm today here, I want to be there, and drawing in parallel to your business model and your strategic growth plan, an impact plan where you also anticipate if your model is successful, if your seed company, or if the idea you have at seed stage is strong and valid and is bound to grow, then this is what ultimately what your impact could look like in 5 years' time. So I think these two elements are very important to that question. Identify indicators for your business model, your company, but also set yourself quantifiable targets on each of those indicators so that you use this very much as business planning type of tool, or let's say a compass for you as a mission-driven founder.
Yeah, we are reaching the end. Sorry, there are some more questions, but we need to conclude now. So Geraldine, maybe an announcement for the next
Yeah, so we have a last question for you. Don't hesitate to join the next session. So today it was with Cyril, and thank you again, Cyril, and we'll come back to conclude the session. But next week we have Chiara from Patagonia. She will explain also how Patagonia has evolved and become the leading company in the circularity for the textile industry. So she will share also expectation in terms of new technologies, their interest also in for example, smart textile. So it could be also very interesting. The same approach with Arjo Wiggins with Gaël Dupré. We're going to also highlight how the paper industry is entering into its revolution and could become the future of electronics. So it's also very related to sustainability, to reduce the use of plastics and to add more functions to the paper. We have Meet the Investors with Truffle Venture, Ship2B Venture, Sodexo Venture, will explain their investment strategy, what they are looking for, how they also address impact in their investment. And as I mentioned, we have also the Smart Marina approach to drive the future of smart and sustainable cities with a lot of interest and investment to build strong sustainability with new technologies. So if you are interested to join, we will be happy to, of course, register you and provide you with access to all those speakers. So thank you all for your active participation, and thank you so much, Cyril, for this very interesting session and sharing all these insights from you. Maybe you want to give a last word? Perfect. So thank you all. Yes, sorry, Cyril.
No, just want again to say thank you. A pleasure to be here, same as last year, and available to continue the discussion also with the audience. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Cyril. Thank you to our participants, and we are talking to you very soon. Thank you.
Sure.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Have a good day. Bye.